Thank you so much for joining us on At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. Athletes have brought the question of domestic violence to the forefront with abuse charges filed against various NBA players, NHL players, NFL players, and even here at Bradley University, a player has been charged with a form of domestic violence. And with that in the news, we're going to discuss what is domestic violence and what services are available to help. And to have that discussion, we have Nowlan and Adjabeng with us. Senna is the Director of Countering Domestic Violence, Neville House, at Mid-Central Community Action in McLean County. Senna, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us, Kevin Nowlan. Kevin is the Associate Executive Director at the Center for the Prevention of Abuse in Peoria. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Cheryl is joining us. Cheryl is the victim of domestic violence and has taken steps to improve her lot in life. We appreciate your being with us and sharing that story.
Thank you.
Before we hear from Cheryl, let's define domestic violence, because we use that term very broadly. And Kevin, if you would be kind enough to if you can,
sure,
put a thumbnail sketch on what is domestic violence.
Sure. What's important to realize about domestic violence, a lot of times we think about physical abuse when we think domestic violence, but it really encompasses a lot more than that. It's emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, lots of different things. But ultimately what it comes down to is a person in a relationship maintaining power over the other person or control over the other person. So when we define that, that's typically what we think of is the person controlling you, and then that's how we would define it as abuse.
So control is the critical word here.
It's a critical word, and also we also have to see it as a pattern of control with one person over another. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that it just doesn't happen all of a sudden. It takes time, and it's a process for it to happen.
So some examples, I mean, you mentioned there's physical, there's emotional,
sure,
financial, but what are some examples of how would you recognize abuse or domestic violence if it happened to you?
Well, if it happened to me, I would typically, of course, with the physical, it's much easier to tell.
Sure.
So when it comes to the emotional one, I guess there would typically be a feeling of a loss of self-esteem that would be involved, the person bringing them down, making them feel worthless, making them feel alone, ashamed, feeling at blame for what's taking place to them, against them. But typically it would be just those kind of intrinsic or internal feelings of less of a person than that individual that's controlling you.
With that as background, that there are lots of different types of domestic violence. Cheryl, could you share with us, if you would, your particular situation? How did you know that you were going through domestic violence? Because yours wasn't physical.
Right, it was emotional. I wasn't even really aware that it was domestic violence. I just knew that something wasn't right. It was more of a constant mental game that he would play. Power and control over the remote control or having the air conditioner on, and I had no idea that that was domestic violence. I mean, certain things, we had to eat at a certain time, we turn the TV off at a certain time, go to bed at a certain time, and it was all dictated by him when he said. And he was the one that, the place that we were living at was in his name, he was paying the bills, and so he controlled everything. What time we could leave, or, if we were going to go shopping, and, we would get out in public, and it would even be an embarrassment at those times. He would just do things that would just embarrass you in front of the clerks or anyway, and so I did not know that that was domestic violence, yeah. I didn't know that the emotional and the mental until I went to pursue to get out of the situation, and I did a little test thing that they had there, and he shot it off the charts, because most people, when they think of domestic violence, they think of the hitting and those sort of things. And so I had no idea.
Was there a trigger point that you said enough is enough, or was it just the build-up, the gradual build-up?
It was the gradual build-up. I had just had enough. It was a short period that I went through it, but I knew it wasn't healthy, I knew it wasn't normal, And so I just knew I wanted out of that situation, and I wasn't going to be there anymore.
And it was even more critical in your case because you had a grandchild that you were raising?
Yes, yes. And I was afraid of what she was going to see and go through and suffer emotionally and mentally as a result of all of that. And, you know, and there comes that fear that goes with it. Where are we going to live? How am I going to provide for her? You know, not having the job at the time. Transportation was iffy, you know, so it was.
Did you not have a job of your own choice or of his choice?
It was of my own choice. I was in the middle of a transition from moving from one state to another, and I hadn't yet found employment. So,
how typical is this, that what she went through?
Well, I think it's very typical. I think what she brings up an interesting point was about, you mentioned a grandchild and a concern for them. I think one thing that is important for us to point out is with kids is that kids that grow up in households where they would witness kind of this abuse are about 1,000 times more likely to be in these kind of relationships when they grow up. So by her recognizing the dangers there certainly made an impact, of course, for her, but you know, just as important for her granddaughter who was witnessing what was taking place in that. But I would say that everything she's saying is extremely typical, and I would say the norm almost, in that he is the one you know, providing for the housing or the finances, for the transportation, for making the individual totally dependent upon them is key for them, because then it's hard for Cheryl to leave. I mean, the more she is dependent upon him, the less likelihood she is to move on away from him. And the emotional abuse, I think, is important to bring up too, and just how detrimental that is. Maybe Cheryl didn't recognize, because it wasn't a punch in the face or a push or something like that. She was questioning herself, and that might have been intentional on his part. He knew that if he crossed a certain line, that she might recognize that and be more apt to leave. So that emotional abuse is extremely detrimental in that it causes those kind of questions, but also it's at the same time it's bringing Cheryl's self-esteem down. It's making her feel like maybe I am to blame, and making it less likely that she would leave him.
Did you feel that way, that you know, like at first, gee, what am I doing wrong?
yeah, I kept thinking, what am I doing that's causing him to act this way and behave, you know? And so then I'd try a different way, and that wouldn't work either. So yeah, it did. At first I did. I thought maybe it was me. And
that's typical of...
Yes, that's very typical, and you know, and it's great that Cheryl was able to leave at the time she did, because sometimes we see as survivors, it has to get physical for them to recognize it. So this is a really great educational piece where when it's emotional and it's mental, survivors will just keep thinking about, am I doing something wrong? What's going on? And that's the time where we actually encourage people to call the hotline, to talk to somebody and just talk it through, to be able to identify the signs, because it's not just in our community. When it's physical, that's when people realize that it's domestic violence. When it's emotional, when they're like, oh, it's not like he hit me or anything, or it's not like he hit you, and it's not that bad. And so this is a really great example of how we can actually prevent that before it gets worse.
Senna mentioned the hotline, and we'll give those phone numbers to you at the end of the program for both Neville House and for the Center for Prevention of Abuse. Kevin, I wanted to follow up on all of this. The situation that Senna described of recognizing in advance, or not in advance, but recognizing that this was unhealthy. It didn't take a punch in the face, as you said. So when does and I'm going to use woman as an example. I know men are abused too.
Sure, certainly.
But when does a woman come to the Center for Prevention of Abuse?
Various times for different services. I would say our emergency shelter services, which are the fewest of the services we provide. We serve about 300 individuals in shelter a year, and last year we served a total of 3,300 survivors of domestic violence. So shelter are certainly the fewest of the services that we provide. But when people are accessing our shelter, it's typically because of a crisis that's occurred, whether they're presenting at the hospital, coming in there because of the injuries they sustained, which it's important to point out that you know, when women are injured, typically it's domestic violence that's responsible for it. So we get a lot of calls from the hospital, or maybe it's the police showed up at a residence because of a call either by a survivor or either by a neighbor or something. So those kind of calls, it's more immediate in nature right away, where more frequently our services are outreach, which would be support groups or one-on-one counseling or assistance with orders of protection. And those typically are over a longer period of time. It's somebody questioning their relationship. They come in and talk to a counselor, kind of talk about the dynamics of abuse, the cycle of abuse, what it looks like, and just really processing what's taking place in the relationship and if it's something that it is worthwhile getting out of. So usually that is something that occurs over a longer time frame than those crisis kind of calls.
I want to talk more in depth about some of those services in just a
Okay.
moment, but let me go back to Cheryl. And did you know about, and in your case it was the Center for Prevention of Abuse, it could just as well been Neville House, but did you know that these services existed?
No. No.
So you thought you were like on your own, I have to make this decision, do I get out, do I stay?
Yeah,
There-
and where am I going to go? And because I didn't, I mean, you kind of hear about it, but it's not real publicly announced that these women have options to go to a transitional shelter for the protection. And, it's kind of kept, and of course the abuser doesn't want you to know that's out there.
So, I'm sure of that. So how did you find out?
My sister said, I think there's a place here in town that you can call and they may let you stay there and they'll hide you like to where he can't get to you. He won't know where you are and you can get on your feet maybe from there. And so I actually called the police department first and they referred me, gave me the phone number.
And you happened to stay at the House of Hope,
Yes.
which is in Pekin. That's one of your services.
One of our two emergency shelters. They have a shelter in Peoria and a shelter in Pekin.
So how helpful was that in reassuring you that you were making the right decision and you were taking the right steps?
It was life-changing. It really was. I felt like there was no hope when I got there. I felt like I'd made a very bad decision and affected my life as well as my child's. And they offered services and they were very supportive. And I mean, there was a few times I wanted to give up and they encouraged me not to.
She said the few times that she felt like giving up. Is there a cycle that some women go through when they are trying to leave a relationship?
Yes, that's a cycle. We have the honeymoon stage where the individual is very nice. There's flowers. There is the dinners and just that's what a lot of women in general will want, or a lot of survivors experience. And then you have the tension building stage where the offender is being critical or just being controlling, and you're not sure what you've done wrong, and so you're wondering, well, let me do this right so that he doesn't see anything wrong with what I'm doing, or are the kids bathed yet? Have the kids eaten yet? Or the kitchen is really dirty. Why didn't you clean? And then it progresses into the battering stage, or just an explosive stage, which is the battering stage. And after that, there's a cooling period, and then you go back into the honeymoon stage where he's saying that he's sorry. I'm going to go to counseling. I don't know why this happened. And a lot of survivors also stay just because the abuse doesn't happen as often as we think, and so they yearn for that honeymoon stage because that's what they're used to, that's what they want. And as human beings, or in our human nature, we want to believe our partners. We met them when they were abusive, and so we yearn for that, and we hope that it could change. And so that's when the cycle, and so when people call a hotline or we get in contact with survivors, we try to educate them on those cycles. And Cheryl had earlier mentioned when we were talking in the back room about how all the checklists that she had to fill out, she realized that all of them, if they've asked you, have I been abused? Most of those checklists were among some of the behaviors, which is very common.
You went through that checklist.
Yes.
And Was that kind of a trigger point for you that said, whoa?
Yeah, it was very much an eye-opener because I had no idea that emotional and mental, what I was going through was abuse, was a form of abuse. I had no idea.
I want to make sure we differentiate between an argument and abuse.
Sure.
Because when you look at the site, the websites, and there's a list of items, and some of them are very clear. Have you been hit, repeatedly hit? Have you been denied finances? Those rise to the forefront. But some of them, including one says, refuse to talk or listen to you.
Sure.
Well, I'm sorry, but most couples that I'm aware of have had arguments where
Sure.
I'm just not going to talk about it right now. So how do you define that line?
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, healthy relationships, of course, have their issues too with communication and things like that, and that's natural. And that's important that we bring that out when we're talking to people about healthy relationships of what they really look like. The difference being is that in a healthy relationship, there is some give and take, and there's some equality there. In an unhealthy relationship, it would be where one person maintains that power and that control. So regardless of the argument, there really isn't an argument that takes place in a domestic violence relationship because there's no consensus that's going to come from that argument. There's no equality there. So that's where it becomes easier to recognize if you can realize that this argument is futile. There's one person who is in charge of this argument, and that's an easy way to discern that this is one where there's an imbalance of control in the relationship.
Let's talk about relatives and friends. So I become aware, for sure, I'm sure that there's some sort of domestic violence going on at a friend's house. Do I play a role at all?
Yes. I think that it's important. A lot of survivors who have been successful leaving, they've done that through the support of family, friends, our shelters or our domestic violence programs. I think that it's important for family and friends to recognize that they have to be supportive. They have to be patient because of the cycle, and also I mentioned to Kevin earlier when we were having a conversation that the average time a survivor leaves an abusive relationship is 7 to 10 times, and so being aware that she might go back. And being patient with that person and meet them where they are. And when they're ready to leave, because you cannot tell them to leave and not have that safety plan in place or that not have those resources that they need. And so the important thing is to wait and be patient and be supportive until they're ready to leave. And then you're right there to provide those resources and support when they need it.
I want to continue that, but 7 to 10 times?
She makes a great point here, and it's important that we get this out there, is that, you know, family and friends, I understand why people kind of put their hands up and say, I can't do this anymore. I've witnessed this person go back to this individual that's doing these terrible things to them, and for my own self-care, I have to cut this person off. The problem with that is that's what the abusive individual wants. The abuser wants this person to not have a support system, family and friends, because they are the ones that are going to help them get out of that relationships, but they're also the ones that help rebuild that self-esteem that's so important. You know, the abuser does his most to make sure that that person feels worthless, good for nothing, nobody else would have me, all these other things. That family kind of rebuilds that and gives her the strength or courage to leave with that self-esteem. So what I try to say to family and friends when I talk to them is, it's important that you be available when she does decide to leave. It is 7 to 10 times, and you never know when the final time's going to be.
Cheryl, for you, you had a support mechanism that was helpful.
Yes.
Your sister? And how important was that to you?
It was very important. It made the difference because I wasn't aware that there was really anything out there for us to do.
We've talked about families helping. What, Senna, are there things that a friend or family member shouldn't do when they recognize domestic abuse?
Yes, one of the main things that they shouldn't do is to press or pressure the survivor to leave. because when sometimes the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when there's that end of the relationship, because the offender loses control. And so when you don't have any safety plan in place, it's really dangerous for family members to just say, oh, you know, why don't you leave? And it's not that easy, because when they call the hotline, sometimes that might not be the best time to leave. And so having that in place, it's one of the important things that family members need to, be aware of. Another one is being non-judgmental. Because when you haven't walked in someone's shoes, it's easy to say, well, it's your fault and it will never happen to me. But being aware and being non-judgmental, and as Kevin said, just being there, being available when they're ready to take those steps.
And I assume, and I've witnessed this, we probably shouldn't act as experts.
Yes.
No. She brings up another great point. 1 out of 3 women who are murdered in our country are murdered by their intimate partner. And the majority of that time when it's happened is when she's leaving for good. So it is extremely dangerous time, and that's when it is very important to seek out, services from somebody, whether that be the Neville House or the Center for Prevention of Abuse, or even call in the national hotline to get some advice on that.
Let's talk about those services that you provide. Court advocacy?
Yes, court advocacy. We have court advocates, at least for the County Domestic Violence Program, and I know Center for Prevention of Abuse has that too. We have court advocates who work with the survivors and go through all the orders of protection paperwork. They explain all the remedies to them. It can be very confusing and very frustrating for an individual who has never navigated that that system. And so it's really helpful for them to go through that process with them and actually accompany them to court to go through that process.
And then there's counseling. Does that include one-on-one and
Sure.
and maybe include kids at some point?
Yeah, one-on-one groups. We'll do family counseling as well, depending on what the discussion's going to be about. But that would also involve safety planning for the entire family as well. So we do some safety plans with the kid as well. If you hear a particular word, this is what you're supposed to do, or this is where you go. If you see a certain sign, this is what you do. So it's really important.
And I want to bring one point up, and I know that both of you do this, but Cheryl brought up a point about she didn't know, and she didn't think that, in this case, House of Hope, how do you know about it? It's not, so public awareness.
Yes. That's very important. We do a lot of presentations in the community. We cover a lot of events and try to get the word out there about services. We have tariff cards with our hotline numbers on it, pens, just promotional materials too. We have those tariff cards actually even in some of the physicians' bathrooms, so that individuals can discreetly take those and be able to call us. There's still more work to be done.
Kevin, real briefly, I want to talk about elder abuse and abuse of children. The differentiation between what we've been talking about?
Right. Yeah, there is a differentiation. First of all, when it comes to child abuse, the state pretty much handles that with the Department of Children and Family Services. Saying that, the Center for Prevention of Abuse will provide therapy to kids that have witnessed violence, any type of violence. So we do offer those kind of therapeutic services as well. The Center for Prevention of Abuse has an Adult Protective Service Department, and what we do is there's a statewide hotline that calls go in that are then investigated. So if somebody is elderly, which they define as 60 or over, or disabled and younger than 60, then a report would be called in, and then we would send out an investigator to look into the allegations that were made and then to provide support services. The difference between the two, just to say, is with a child that's being abused, the state kind of mandates what happens. When an elderly person is being abused, that person still has some discretion on how they want the situation handled. So they can certainly consent to services, or they can decline them. And often we need to remember when it comes to elder abuse that typically the person that's abusing that individual is a caretaker. So we have to keep that in mind, that when we go out to investigate and offer services, that person realizes that if they pursue with services, that they're going to lose their caretaker. So that becomes a huge issue at some points, and we'll try as best as we can to show them that we will make sure that they have appropriate and better care, but that's still a hard hurdle to get over.
We promised you the hotline phone numbers. Let me give those to you now. for the Center for Prevention of Abuse, which covers what territory, Kevin?
Peoria, Tazewell, and Woodford counties.
The Tri-County area. It's area 309-691-0551. For McLean County, you cover McLean County at
yes.
Neville House, and you can see the number on the screen, 309-827-7070. And we encourage you to keep those numbers handy in case you might find them of value. Let's hope that that isn't the case. Cheryl, I can't thank you enough for participating with us. And Senna, thank you very much. Senna Adjabeng of Neville House over in McLean County. And to Kevin Nowlan at the Center for Prevention of Abuse, we thank you as well.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next week with another edition of At Issue, when we will talk about all those referenda that are on the ballot. Yes, we're voting for people, but there's a lot of referendum that we're going to be talking about next week here on At Issue. Join us then.